Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we're going to be diving into Tim Keller and his endorsement of critical biblical theory. What is that, you might ask? Well, that's a good question, and we're going to answer that question in this video because we're going to go through a lecture that is very long-winded. So that's what we're going to be diving into, but let's start off with the context for why we're talking about the subject on this Friday. Lots of confusion out there over critical theory. See this helpful lecture by Chris Watkin. It not only explains what critical theory is, it shows that it's possible to develop a biblical critical theory. So Chris Watkin is a very overly philosophical guy. This is someone who definitely wants to throw around big words and talk a lot to sound very smart. I don't think he really is all that smart from listening to his lecture, because I do listen to this lecture, just so we can have a full context of what Tim Keller is really promoting. So with that said, when someone says critical theory, what is critical theory? Let me give you the actual definition of critical theory. Critical theory is cultural Marxism. That's what it is. There really isn't another definition of it. It is just cultural Marxism. And that's why you can develop critical race theory, which is Marxism along the lines of race, rather than classical Marxist, which is along the lines of wealth and class. You can develop it along queer theory, which is basically about heterosexual people being the villains and then homosexuals and transvestites and all that being the heroes. You can create a critical theory along any sort of disparity or division demographic in society. And putting biblical on it doesn't make it biblical. And that's largely been the criticism that I've seen of this tweet, is that you can't put biblical on something that's inherently anti-biblical. Now, Chris Watkins has a very different definition of critical theory. Like I said, I did listen to the entire lecture at 1.5 speed. This guy is a rambler. He is not concise with his language at all. He wants to say a lot, but hardly says, or he wants to talk a lot, but hardly says anything. And you really only get to some application, some meat and bones when he's asked questions on it, and he has to kind of apply his mentality in a real life equation. And even the questions that he receives, very philosophical in nature, and I mean that in a pseudo douchey way. So with that said, let's dive into the actual lecture. I'm going to play some clips, but let me just give you the summary of what Chris Watkins believes that critical biblical theory is. And it really is a third wayism. It's basically saying, well, there's no way that one side has it completely right and the other side has it completely wrong. There's no way that one side's completely good and the other side's completely evil. There's got to be a middle way, and the Bible points us to this middle way because there's people that created false dichotomy between justice and love, and therefore the people that are focused on justice forget the love, and the people that are focused on love forget the justice. It's really that narrow-minded and shallow-minded. Like, this guy is not thinking with his head in the real world, because when you look into the real world, you see people that are dead wrong on practically every single issue. Every single issue. Why is it that Branch Covidian churches are also pro-revoice movement and also pro-critical race theory? It's because they're wrong on every issue. So why is it that, the churches that are taking a stronger stand against Branch Covidianism are also taking a very strong stand against critical race theory and a very strong stand against the revoice movement? It's because they're right on every issue. They're following the Bible. The dichotomy is between those who follow God and those who reject God and those who want to continue in their rebellion against God. That's really the dichotomy of this world. The people that are red-pilled with the Bible and the people that are blue-pilled with their total depravity. So that's the dichotomy in the world that we see. And he kind of wants to create a third way that's really in the middle of that dichotomy, that the Bible's really in the middle of these things. And it's just pathetic, in my opinion. So we're going to watch some clips, and they're going to be a little bit longer clips because you got to provide the full context. And this guy's a rambler, does not like to give concise answers on anything. So we're going to first talk about some clips about his views on Freud. And then we're going to talk about his views on good and evil and stuff like that.
several questions. I'll ask my favorite, and then if we have time, maybe I can get to the others. I was reading Truman's The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self, and he breaks down how different philosophical ideas shaped where we're at in terms of expressive individualism. And he goes through, many figures, Freud, Rousseau, etc. I couldn't help but think when you were talking about your different identities, how did you term it again? The figures. I couldn't help but think that Rousseau almost makes up one figure, Freud makes up another figure, which have all, Marx makes up another figure, and all of these have kind of formed this amalgam of what we're calling a story. Would you say I'm on the right track with that? And if so, do you think apologetically attacking individual figures is a path forward? And I don't mean their philosophical, precursor, but I mean their particular instantiation as we see it now in society.
What are they trying to get at when they think of ourselves in that way? And so let's take Freud, for example. There's a sense that there's more to me than my conscious self. Is that true? Yes. And there's a sense of that there are parts of me that I'm not in control of. I do things sometimes that I wish I hadn't, or that I can't explain having done. And all of those are sort of helpful intuitions. They give us a sense. I think that the Bible would concur that we're not completely transparent to ourselves. Jeremiah on the heart, for example. And then we say, well, how would the Bible get at what Freud is trying to get at with his topography of the psyche? They say, well, it wouldn't get at it in a Freudian way. It wouldn't talk about the id and the superego. But we would talk about the heart, the deceitfulness of the heart. We talk about regeneration, blah, blah, blah. And then I think what we'd want to do is show how Freud is onto something, but doesn't quite grasp the reality of it in a biblical frame. And so in a sense, we can come along and help him and say, what I think you're trying to get at, Sigmund, is this. In this fuller picture. And I think you've got part of it, but I don't think you've got all of it. And what we're doing there is we're taking Freud through a 1 Corinthians 1 journey, if you like. And Freud will never understand the full complexity of human reality outside of the creation, fall, redemption, consummation framework. And so all of these things can be subversively fulfilled by taking them through that journey. So we're neither simply attacking Freud, nor simply affirming him, nor cherry picking little bits of what he says and taking them as if we can extract them from the rest. It's a more fundamental engagement with him than that. And so that's what I'd want to do. I wouldn't want to attack Freud, neither would I want to agree with him. I'd want to take him through that 1 Corinthians 1 journey.
So let's do a point of order on who Sigmund Freud is. Sigmund Freud is a very evil guy. Like, this is someone who has extremely evil ideology that has perpetuated throughout these field of psychology. And he's been wrong about just about everything. And I mean just about everything. You can look at psychosexual theory and just psychological stages of development and stuff like that. This guy's wrong on just about everything he's ever laid his hands on, but he's been right about some very generic concepts, like the fact that early childhood is important, like the fact that, there's more to us than just our surface. There's like an unconscious mind. Okay, he's right about those two things, and that's like about it. But otherwise, Sigmund Freud is a complete rejection of the Imago Dei. His view of humanity is one that we are just our base desires and nothing more. Sigmund Freud is an evil man. He is rotting in hell as we speak. And there's just really nothing positive that he really contributed to society. That's just a fact. When you look at just our theories about sexuality and a lot of the unbiblical views of sexuality that we hold to this day, a lot of them came from Freud. So with that said, Chris Watkins wants to cherry pick Freud's view to summarize his view as there's an unconscious self. And that's what Freud was getting at. And no, that's not what Freud was getting at. What Freud was actually getting at is that we're nothing but our base desires of sexual impulse. That was Freud's chief modus operandum. So with that said, he definitely tries to elevate Freud. And again, yes, we should reject Sigmund Freud entirely. We could do without him and we'd be better off. Like this really is not a debatable point for a Christian to make. And to point it out that, some of what Sigmund Freud did was good. We don't have to completely accept him, but we don't have to completely reject him. There's a third way, because that's basically Chris Watkins' definition of biblical critical theory is third wayism. It's third wayism, just poorly explained. Poorly explained third wayism. That's what Chris Watkins is teaching. So now let's get into another elaborated clip based on a different question that a viewer gave. And the reason why we're giving viewer questions is, again, because this guy's extremely rambling in his lecture. So you got to use his question and answer session, because this guy's finally putting meat to or pen to paper on what he's teaching.
Dennis writes, when you talk about critical theory making some things valuable, what would be the standard that is used to determine what is valuable? Now, it's a great question, Dennis. So from a Christian point of view, we have a standard that's outside the created order. The God of Genesis 1 says that things are good. That's not our decision. That's something that is outside our human reality. If we don't have that, we have to get our sense of what is good and bad from inside the created world somewhere. And people have done this in various ways. Some people have said, okay, let's say that reason is good and superstition is bad. Some people have said, let's say that the proletariat is the embodiment of the good and the bourgeoisie is what must be overcome. But the problem is that whenever we do that, whenever we get our measure of what is good and bad from inside the created order, then it makes us very closed cultural critics. It closes our minds, because at the pain of losing all our orientation to what is good and bad, we've got to say that some things in this world are unqualified, unmitigated good. And some things in this world are unqualified and unmitigated bad. And that opens the door, does it not, to dogmatism and totalitarianism. But the Christian doesn't find her ultimate reference for what is good in this world. And what does that mean? It means that whatever we encounter in the created order, we encounter with an expectation that it's going to be some mixture of good and bad. Now, there can be different proportions in that mixture. Some things can be better than others. Some things can be almost all bad and some things almost all good. I'm not suggesting that everything is equal. But it will mean that whatever we encounter, we'll be able to look at it with an open mind. So there's going to be something here that is of value, because the only thoroughly evil thing is the devil. And there's going to be something here that's to reject, because the only good one is God, and he is not in this world. And so it leaves the Christian with a wonderful openness, a critical, in the best sense of that term, a critical openness to the whole of culture that is very, very hard to get to if you don't have your ultimate reference for what is good and bad outside of the created order.
The conclusion of what Chris Watkins was explaining was that there's nothing completely good in this world and there's nothing completely evil in this world. And since we are operating in created order and created order is fallen, nothing is completely good, nothing is completely evil. And this is completely insane. This is completely insane. We can go through several examples of things that are objectively evil. There is no good in them. And I believe this guy claims to be reformed, and he's teaching something that's completely anti-total depravity. So good luck being reformed. His reformed credentials are completely in question following this view of humanity that he gives. Like, there was nothing good about Mao Zedong. There's nothing good about Mao Zedong. He was right about absolutely nothing. He starved tens of millions of people. This guy was an evil guy. There's nothing good about him. We can reject him summarily. Adolf Hitler, again, nothing really good about Adolf Hitler. Not really all that good of a military commander once he got completely disassociated with the front lines and, disengaged from the front lines of the war. He just really went downhill there, and there was just, You can't even say game recognized game by the end of the war because Hitler was just out of his mind. Just look at so many instances of evil in human history. Like, what was redeemable about Muhammad? What was redeemable about Muhammad? This is someone who claims to have had an angel give him revelation, which, the Bible talks about that, by the way. The Bible's pretty clear on that story. If someone ever gives you that story, they're a false prophet, they're a false teacher, they're giving you a false gospel. The Bible is very clear about that. What was good about Joseph Smith, who basically had the same story as Muhammad, except in America? What was so special about, what was redeemable about those people? Oh, that Mormons had a great family structure of, hey, dude, let me sleep with your wife, because that was Mormonism in its early days. Again, what was redeemable about these people? Nothing. Like, stop trying to say, oh, Thanos had a point. No, he failed economics. This is asinine. Like, why are we trying to find good qualities in objectively evil instances? Like, how are we supposed to describe what the Bible clearly defines as sin? Oh, well, those sins aren't completely bad. It's just nuts. I understand saying that, even when people do good deeds, there's still an aspect that they have to wrestle with. The original sin aspect. For instance, I'll use myself as an example. I can do this ministry all day, all night, 2:30 in the morning as I'm recording this. And, I have to keep in check any evil, sinful impulses that I have in doing this. I got to make sure my motivation is to love the church, to love God, to love my neighbor, to love my fellow brother in Christ, in providing them this information. I got to make sure that I do not make this about my ego, my personality, or anything like that. Even though I have an ego, even though I have a personality, I can't make it about those things. That doesn't take away, that doesn't make me on the side of evil, or even not on the side of good. And that's kind of the issue. This is that third wayism that, which is really a critique of objectivity. There is objective evil in this world, and there is objective good in this world. And to say that Satan is the only objectively evil person or being is completely false. It's unbiblical. You tell me what was good about Haman. You tell me what was good about the Pharaoh. You tell me what was good about Absalom. Like, what was good? Oh, Absalom wanted to defend his sister's honor. Like, I guess that's decent. That doesn't make him a redeemable person. Like, he was not redeemed. And the Bible's pretty clear about how he ended up. What was so good about Ahab or Jezebel? Like, there is objectively evil and there's objectively good. There's a reason why Revelation uses Jezebel and Balaam as biblical imagery for evil. There's a reason for that, because these are villains. We need to recognize good versus evil, and he's trying to say, no, there's a third way between good versus evil. And in reality, there's not. Not in the biblical sense. Now, in a lot of worldly matters, this is true. There is, sometimes there's conflicts between good versus good. Sometimes there's conflicts between evil versus evil. To use World War II as an example, the Eastern Front was evil versus evil. Nazi Germany versus communist USSR. That was evil versus evil. There was no good guy in that fight, except for Finland. And you can justify the Romanians and, those countries. You can justify their cause. I don't think they were necessarily on the evil side, but, they, again, knew that they had to choose a side between Hitler and Stalin. So I guess a lot of those Eastern European countries chose Hitler. That did not work out well for them. But you look at a bunch of other conflicts, the U.S. Civil War. Lee was, by all accounts, a Christian, and he was on the losing side of that conflict. And, General Grant, not a terrible guy either. So you can get a lot wrong by trying to make everything a good versus evil conflict, but the context of modern times is it's never been clear to divide a line between good versus evil. It has never been clearer in my lifetime, in a lot of your lifetimes, because my audience is generally older than I am, that there is a clear divide between good versus evil. Like, the Democrat Party is an objectively evil party. There's nothing redeemable about the Democrat Party. There's nothing redeemable about that party. They're pro-abortion, they're pro-homosexuality, they're pro-transgendering children, they're pro-Branch Covidianism, they're pro-everything evil. There's nothing good about that party. Now, I'm not saying the Republicans are good, but I am saying that the people that are on the side of the good more identify with the Republican Party. That is what I'll say about that. There's plenty of evil people in the Republican Party. And the reason for that is because evil people subvert institutions that are good. It's very hard for evil to start an institution. For instance, there was this Methodist denomination that was super progressive. I did a video about them, I believe, a long time ago, like early in 2021. I did a video on the Lexicon Methodist denomination. The LMX is what they call themselves. Something like the Lexicon Methodist Connection. The LMX, that's what they call themselves. And they had 40 churches at the start of 2021. And they ended with 20 because they were united on their hatred of God. They were united on that. But outside of that, they all wanted to go their own ways. Like Stevie Nicks' song, you go your own way. So, and that's what they did. Half of them left, and they're struggling for cash. And this is a hilarious example that I'm bringing up. But at the end of the day, evil people try to subvert good institutions. Look at the Southern Baptist Convention. You can't third way your way to explaining the Southern Baptist Convention. There might be three sides to that conflict. There is the evil, there is the good, and there is the stupid. The people that cannot be bothered to pay attention and wake up. So I guess there is a third wayism between good, evil, and stupid. But are the stupid people on the side of, are they not stupid because God allows them to be stupid? I understand that, we shouldn't dismiss people who are on the side of who are stupid and just need to be informed. Like, we shouldn't outright dismiss those people. But when they're defending heretical views, when they're defending critical theory, when they're defending Ed Litton and his sin and his ability to be a pastor, when they're defending downgrade and corruption, they're on the side of the evil, and we should treat them as such. That's, those are the rules of engagement for spiritual warfare. You cannot tolerate that. Pray that they repent, give them a message of repentance for sure. But if they're on the side of the enemy, they're on the side of the enemy. And Tim Keller, to circle back to Tim Keller, he's on the side of the enemy. He's been consistently on the side of the enemy. When was the last time he was on the side of the good? And I don't think Tim Keller's on the side of the stupid. Let's see. He runs the Gospel Coalition. The Gospel Coalition is your NPC of government propaganda. Whatever is tolerable, whatever they think is within the Overton window, the extreme left of the Overton window, the Gospel Coalition will peddle. They will peddle Branch Covidianism because they are worse about that in other countries than they are in the United States. They are not consistent in their messaging globally. In fact, the consistency is that they push the government narrative globally. They push evil and tyranny globally. That's the consistency, is that they peddle the state ideology and the state messaging. That's the consistency of the Gospel Coalition. That is Tim Keller's baby that I'm talking about. And let's also talk about Tim Keller's church, Redeemer Presbyterian, NYC, and how they have medical apartheid. That's Tim Keller's baby. And, Tim Keller's all about missions in the cities, because we got to focus all our mission attention on the cities and not these unchurched swathes of rural America. We got to focus on these churches in the cities that won't last very long or are scattered on top of each other. We got to focus on those churches and planting churches in areas that have plenty of churches instead of areas that have very few churches. It's just a nuts missiology, and you should definitely subscribe, because we're going to be talking more about that. And, one of the things about Tim Keller is I've gotten so many requests to write about whether he is or isn't a false teacher. So consider this a prelude to that writing that I'm going to be doing. But this guy is promoting, just to go back to the original tweet, he is promoting biblical critical theory by Chris Watkins, who's too philosophical for his own good and just too much of a philosophy major to be useful on practical issues, because he just wants to talk a lot like a sophist. If you're Socrates, you know what I'm talking about. He's basically a modern day sophist. So I don't get what's so smart about this. Again, that was not a good lecture that Tim Keller recommended. It's third wayism to the core. It's third wayism. And that's who Tim Keller is. And that's who Tim Keller has really always been. He's always been Marxist. He's always been a city lover, a city worshiper, in my opinion. He's always been these things. So that's really all I got to say about that. My name is Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like this kind of content, also subscribe to the channel, and also check out evangelicaldarkweb.org, and you can become a subscriber there. And again, I'm giving out gifts for Zealot and Peacemaker class subscribers. You get Enemies Within the Church mailed to you. And that's a promo that I'm running. So that's all I got for today. Comment below what you think about what I think, and I will catch you on the next